Welcome to Hard Talk. I'm Sean Lay. It took half a century of civil war to give South Sudan its independence. Just 5 years later, leading figures from the independence struggle are calling for the United Nations to take charge. Majak Diagot fought in the War of Independence, became Deputy Minister of Defence, but was sacked by the President and is now in exile. Have South Sudan's politicians failed their starving, displaced people? Or was the South never viable as a separate country in the first place? Majak Diagot, welcome to Hard Talk. Thank you for being with us. You're talking to us today from Nairobi rather than from South Sudan. Why is that?
This is very unfortunate, of course. The crisis in the country have sent us to different points of compass. And I found myself being in exile and being in Nairobi at the moment. It is because of the crisis that broke out in my country in December 2013, and which took some of us to jail, and which has sent a huge part of the South Sudanese population on a wholesale displacement. Some of them are now in the neighboring countries, amounting to about 1.5 million of refugees. Some of them are internally displaced. Some of them are in the protection camps guarded by the army soldiers. So that's the state of affairs in my country, and that's why I'm not able to talk from South Sudan.
The government says your passport and that of others was revoked for calling for foreign intervention in the country. This is Ambassador Gordon Bay, who handles the South Sudanese diaspora in the United States. He said, there is freedom of speech, but there is no freedom for you to call for toppling the government of South Sudan and for it to be taken over so that South Sudan will be ruled by the United Nations.
That's not what we call for. First of all, let me underscore this. There is no freedom of speech. There is no freedom of association. There isn't freedom of movement for the people in South Sudan. South Sudan is a kind of a big prison at the moment. The government has imposed draconic measures on the entire population of South Sudan. And so when we called for intervention force to come to the country and restore security and stabilize the situation so that there is public safety for all, was because the government of South Sudan has unfortunately squandered its very role of providing security for all.
Pagan, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Pagan Amum, the former Secretary General of the ruling Sudan People's Liberation Movement, a colleague of yours, has founded a group called South Sudan Reborn, which he says is to bring the violence to an end through calling on the United Nations to take over South Sudan. Do you support that?
But South Sudan Reborn is not the SPLM leaders' former political detainees. We are a political entity in the country. We represent the voice of majority of our people who call for democracy and restoration of freedoms.
But President Kiir is a democratically elected president. President Kiir is a democratically elected president.
But when was that? President Kiir was elected in 2010. His term expired in 2015. His legitimacy derives from the agreement which was signed in Addis in 2015, August last year.
Are you calling then for the United Nations to have a role in the governance of your country? If not, what alternative are you seeking?
I'm calling for the deployment of regional